No. Oh, all of these streams start with me going, apparently we're live. Yeah, I don't know. Is this working? My God, I have become that guy.
Is this thing on?
Is this
It's
on?
required.
Is this on? Okay, this is the Art of Rock.
Woohoo!
I think we're live. Yep, we're live. This is the Art of Rock. Welcome. And as usual, first and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the traditional landowners of Los Angeles. And right now, I thank you for your resilience. And it is a lesson to me, always. This is every Saturday. We are doing it here. Art of Rock. Oh, yeah, baby. So join us mainly on What? Fuck off. Angelspit's Twitch. To activate chat, please enable chats here. Really? Oh my God, you're kidding me. Oh, for the love of Christ. Okay, well, we're not going on to that, and I don't really care. What the
It's the circle
fuck?
of chats.
Hold on a minute. Am I live on Twitch? Oh, man, I can't. I'm really not in the place for this today. Okay, what? Okay, you know what? Fuck it. So anyway, we're freeballing it. Welcome to the Art of Rock. Let's just jump into it. What the fuck are we talking about? What are we
I
talking
can
about?
jump in with the studio upgrades that I'm doing.
Let's go. Brett, the floor
All
is
right.
yours.
All right. So what I've been typically doing is, I'll buy a gaming laptop or whatever. And close to the time, before it gets too end of life, those have been my studio computers. One, because I have fast CPUs and lots of RAM. However, I decided to go back and build a dedicated box for the studio again. FL Studio, and probably other DAWs as well, require really fast clock speeds to operate smoothly. And so one of the things I'm looking at is I'm upgrading from an Intel that can ramp up to 4 gigahertz to an AMD Raziel that can ramp up to 5.7 gigahertz. So a significant improvement there. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to spend the money wisely. This thing's going to cost me, every single time it pretty much costs me $2,000 to build a studio box. So I want that thing to last me 10 years or better. So I typically focus on air cooled. In this case, I also am very, very audio heavy when I'm recording instead of MIDI heavy. So I'm dropping 32 gigs of high-speed RAM in it, and additionally, I have it chained to a 512 solid-state drive. The whole concept of this is that you take the project that you're working on, and you can actually load it into the computer at chip speed. So that way, no spinning disks, nothing to slow you down. And when you do that, the machines are able to keep everything in sync much better. One of the things that you'll run into when you don't have the clock speed is your audio and your MIDI can become disattached. And so your Kurzweil, in this case, is playing a beat, and the audio that is coming from the DAW is not lined up to it. And so there's really the main solution to that is power. And as DAWs increase in their complexity, it also becomes necessary to increase the machinery that run them. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Of course, I'm going to be chaining that. The computer that I'm talking to you on will also be coming out of service. So probably by not next week, but probably by the week after that or so, I'll actually be more centered in the screen. So there's a number of things that are happening with that.
Do you mean horizontally or vertically or in the depth?
Well, it is the Demon Studio, so it's probably depth. But yeah, anyway, I don't know if anyone's worked with Exotic PC. They typically make gaming computers, but they also make high-end desktops. And that's who I'm going with. And they're really nice. They'll help you out with what you're doing. I actually literally went to them and said, hey, look, this is the software I'm looking to run. This is what its requirements are. And they worked with me to help take some of the me go chase this down and make sure everything matches.
That's great. Can somebody pick up from this really fantasticness, please?
Yeah, last time I built a PC was 2020-ish, like right around that time. And it was to be a Hackintosh, so it had some other demands. But the biggest, most revolutionary change since the previous time that I'd put a computer together for speed and ease of use and things just being nice all around was getting an NVMe drive on the M2 slot on the motherboard and using that as my, actually two of them, one for large storage and one for the operating system. And it was a motherboard that supported the two slots at a good speed. And I got some drive cards, pieces, things, drives that were rated for relatively high. I don't know if that was like, you know what, speed's relative. They were fast. I know that like the Samsung ones are generally rated as some of the fastest. And when I speed tested them, they came out pretty high. So I put my priority on that. RAM also is cheap to get a lot of it. And a lot of it compared to what I was using before was like 16 gig is a lot in that point. I mean, so I'm wondering, did you focus at all on benchmark speeds for the storage, internal storage on the motherboard?
Yeah, so normally I would. Normally that would be one of the things that, if I were putting the system together, myself, then that would be one of those things. I've worked with this company before, and they're pretty much aligned with what I'm wanting to do. So I relied on them this time to take some of that out. In that regard, I'm dropping a 500 gig NVMe Gen 3 solid state drive as my primary workhorse. Now, you mentioned storage as well, and I actually do something a little bit different for storage. I actually have two NASs. So these end up being
what fabric are they connected on? Are they on Thunderbolt 4? Or,
they're both Buffalo NASs. They're standalones.
So they're on Ethernet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Network attached.
How fast is your Ethernet?
At this point, it's gigabit.
Okay, we're getting there. So that I mean, to me, that's a bottleneck, but also it's offline storage. But
that's right.
Are they solid state drives in your NAS, or are they spinning?
Yeah. These are where I'm allowing things. This is storage, so
long-term storage, slower.
Yeah. So in this case, the speed doesn't matter so much. I'm not relying on these drives to be that thing that brings me up and keeps everything in line. And if I were to pull something from the NAS, again, having that 32 gigs of RAM allows still that file to come into the computer, be held in this case, it's going to be Windows. I forgot the name of it. But basically their temporary state, their temporary RAM is going to allow Windows to hold the whole thing into chip space and operate it that way. And then when I go to make my saves, they go to first the solid state and then are then backed up.
So there's a bit of a RAM disk or virtual disk that exists so that you can actually use the fastest accessible storage, which is RAM, as opposed to even the kind of pretty damn fast storage, which would be your NVMe drive on the motherboard, as opposed to, and I'll just chime in with my version of the external storage is JBOD, as opposed to doing it as any kind of group of drives that know about each other. So I've got a 4-bay USB-C connector, so USB 3 speeds, fast enough, but the bottleneck is absolutely those drives. The SATA or whatever the interface is on those is so much slower than everything else that, that's offline storage. It's 12 terabyte drives. They spin, they make noise. They're in a case that keeps it quiet, all that stuff. But that's the compromise there. A lot of storage, super slow from the drive itself. And those are full size enterprise, just storage disks. And I have them appear on my desktop just as individual volumes. There's no special management or anything like that. But it is the same spiritually exactly what you're doing. Slow stuff on a slower connection, cheaper drives, tons of storage, bring it in, work on the computer. What I don't have on Mac is a sense of using a RAM disk of any sort. There were some utilities to do that where I just allow the operating system to deal with that crap on its own. We don't get to build for it necessarily because in most cases the stuff is soldered to the motherboard and you just get what you get. But Apple does on my end have some of the fastest SSDs on the motherboards that are possible. So the PC build that I did, similar speeds to that I get on the Mac. And I think that is like such a great way of doing it with all these playing to the strengths of the different kinds of storage, the speeds, the expenses, the ways you can even get things in that size because yeah, no, it's cool. So what's your time frame? Is this all getting put together now and
Yes.
you're going to take shipment?
Yep. It was all officially ordered yesterday. So we're looking at a couple weeks here before it's actually put into place. And I wanted to touch on one thing. I remember what I was when I was talking about. You were mentioning RAM drives. So RAM drives really came into their heyday before the OSs started doing page files and swap files of their own. And that goes back to what I was saying. Where if you're able to provide the OS that speed and and just straight up hardware, then you can forego the RAM drive.
Yeah. I mean, I trust the operating systems, Windows and Mac, to deal with their page files and stuff like on their own and purge stuff from memory, especially after having gotten used to iOS for the past 17 years where things just get purged from memory. Like there's no warning to the app that it's going to disappear. There's no warning, in advance that the process is going to be terminated. So people started writing apps very differently with like a lot of real-time statefulness that even if the app goes away, it comes back exactly the same. So things are very different between that influencing how apps are written even on the desktop. And since we're talking specifically about music stuff, you still have to deal with something like Ableton Live or FL Studio or whatever, any of the DAWs, taking up a ton of RAM if you're loading samples, taking up a ton of disk space if you're recording stuff like multi-tracks. But the focus is on the flow in the studio. The focus is on making things work while you're doing the recording. So I assume that what you're upgrading from had some of these bottlenecks in your process of writing and recording.
So yeah, I mean, so an example is like I was working on a track, literally a couple tracks recently, and where I was going with that, what the problem I was having is literally kind of what I was describing early on, where MIDI and audio just aren't lining up. And this is the result of a long process of going through and trying to troubleshoot just, the creation process, how to make that stuff work when you want it to work.
I think you just nailed it. How to make that shit work when you want it to work, because it's so hard when you're trying to make music and you go, I'm in the mood to make music, and then suddenly all your gear just goes flippity flop. Or it doesn't go flippity flop at all.
That's right. Or it does flippity flop 2 different time signatures.
Yes. Or like you said before, when the audio and the MIDI just go out of whack. Do you if you're in that place, do you have something that you can do besides, is there another way you can work on your music if the computer goes to bust land? What do you do? Besides, and let's just say, I'm not going to fix my computer because I'm so full of ideas. Mm-hmm. What do you do?
In that case, I leverage the Kurzweil's internal sequencer. And,
so you actually use their sequences? I
do, especially when I want to just jam. So I will sit there and I'll go through the internal sequencer. I'll fire up the drum machines. I'll, design. I'll go old school as hell, and I'll rely just straight on the backbone MIDI network. And so in this particular case, I wanted to jam, and I wanted to explore what the Kurzweil could do a little bit more, since the machine, the DAW wasn't working correctly. And so I had a great time with a ribbon controller and just the Kurzweil itself.
That's great. That's great. Rosie, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just have a guitar in every room. There's one hanging on the wall in the front all the way over there, and there's one on the floor over there, and there's one in the bedroom. Just pick that thing up and start practicing, learning, writing, whatever. There's a lot you can do that.
So how often do you go DAWless? Like both, everybody. How often do you go, you know what, fuck it, computers, they're getting me down. How often do you create music, jam with music, XYZ without a DAW?
Since I'm already standing here agape with half a sentence coming out, all the time, but let me just say it's with a DAW as an amp. So it's kind of halfway. Like a lot of the time I'll fire up something on a computer that requires electricity and plugins and tone shaping, but it's not creating music, and recording multi-tracks on a DAW. And the other part of the time is just playing guitar in a room without anything powering it or plugged into anything is certainly once a day to once a week range, but not much less than that. So there's a lot of opportunities just in the piano too. Sometimes just sit down and blank, nothing turned on, no phone out to record it, just do stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Holland. But I want to ask you the same question. Yes, the flippity floppity chaos. So if anybody, the first person who can tell me where the flippity floppity hat is, wins my adoration. And don't Google it, for fuck's sake. Brett, talk to me. What's going on?
Flippity floppity hat.
There it is. It's very good, but that's not the flippity floppity hat. That's if you put a flippity floppity hat on it. Brett, what are your thoughts on the DAWless experimentation of Doom?
Yeah, so daily.
You do?
So like Razi said, I also play guitar. As I'm going through the day, about every 30 minutes or so, I'm typically picking up an acoustic and waiting on something to happen, and I have a completely different song design style and with those instruments, and because guitars, especially electrics, take up so much sonic space, they don't always get to play with the synths nicely, and so that happens a lot. And then on the synths themselves, at least monthly, where I'm literally just firing up a drum machine, just something to keep the beat, and then I've got my Kurzweil, my Korg, and my Casio, and an effects box, and I'll just straight up do experimentation for fun, just rap.
Brilliant. Ooh, inspired. Razi,
Yeah.
I want you to get that ointment of inspiration, and I want you to rub it on my body. Mix it with Vegemite. No, my full body. No, that's it. Make my nipples hard. Go. Oh,
one for each nipple.
Let's do it.
Just have bliss sticks.
So when you talk computers, I just go porn. Razi, what do you got?
The spirit of talking about DAWless is certainly in having some boxes around. And I just like clinging to the guitar thing. I learned early on that if you're going to have an office with people in it doing work, you'd better have some musical instruments around so that you don't get work done. It's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And I've taken that to, for decades. That's been the rule, sort of. The traditional groove boxes and pedals and noisemakers on a table kind of thing, I haven't done any of that. I would imagine Carl and Brett, you both have to some extent. Brett, since you just said you did, but also Carl, seeing all the modular gear you have, which doesn't necessarily require a DAW specifically or even a computer going to work. What does that do? How do you do that?
It's been a horribly long time. I haven't turned the Moog One on in at least a month. I feel bad about that. I haven't turned my modular on in at least 2 months. That's disgraceful. I've been getting ready for this live gig, but also it's not flippity floppity, it's bippity boppity hat. Now you know what it is. I always thought it was flippity floppity hat. Maybe it was just an old vinyl. Yeah, it's been a really long time since I've sat down and actually started a song on the modular synth. And a problem I have with doing that is that it just breeds a whole bunch of chaos that I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time combing through, editing, and trying to figure out. I hate doing that. Yeah. I prefer to. I just should say hello to everyone. I can't read your damn fucking things right now because the interface that I'm using to go to to go out to the world is not talking to all the chats. So normally I can read all the chats from YouTube and everywhere, and I can't right now, and it's not syncing to Instagram, and I'm kind of pissed. So welcome to the world of computers and doom and hell and hopelessness. It's great fun to sit down with and probably therapeutic to make blip bloop noises with my bippity boppity hat. Bitbook muses sounds are really great fun, but it never really yields a song to me. Like if I sit down on a synthesizer and I go plink plonk plink plonk, it will yield a song. Also with the blaster beam as well. I guess that I don't really. There's not a lot of times when I just go fucking around for no reason whatsoever. And maybe I should be doing that because this goes back to the conversation we always talk about, which is for God's sake, fucking have fun. And I'm constantly asking myself what engine in my mind has broken down because I'm not having fun anymore. It's interesting. I'll just keep going on a rant very quickly, Rezi, if I can. Then I want to ask you. Hi, Ivan, welcome. I sometimes am concerned that you know what, this is another conversation. Rezi, what are you thinking?
I might have been going toward the same subtopic that you were about to go with, but I wanted to check my notes and see. Yeah, there's a phase of exploration where everything counts as sort of what you're talking about. Like you just turn anything on and record anything, and it's like, I don't know how to do this. What is this? And then you figure stuff out. And then like 30 years later, you're like, I definitely know how to do this. And you hear something on the TV and you're like, oh, I know how they did that. And maybe especially if you're listening to stuff from the 70s through 90s, you're like, I know exactly what synthesizer that is recorded into which console and which reverb because those were the 7 that they used. And at a major label studio, it was this one. And that sucks out some of the
Sex.
it becomes less sexy. You've worn some ruts into the things that you're focused on, and you've started to know them, and you fall back on them, and you lose the ability to look at something else and see that as potential. I don't know anything about that. Let me get into it. And that's been alternatively like tonal harmony for me. Like I keep forgetting that that's even a thing that I could learn a lot about, or getting really good at knowing where the scales are on the guitar neck. I think of it once a year and I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I could spend another lifetime getting good at. But you just see the things that you've gotten very good at because they have so much detail and they're so there, and you bring them back. So tying this back to the noise generating boxes on a table sort of way of creating the DAWless concept, that is one place that I think maybe all of us, could jump into and get something out of, whether it become ambient or rhythmic or noise or harsh or something like that. There's a lot of space in there to say, I don't know how they made that sound. I have no idea what boxes they're using. I don't know what gear acquisition syndrome is going to get triggered by this, but I'm probably going to build something and connect something weird to something else that I didn't even know had a plug for that. And that's kind of exciting. And that's what I'm getting from just saying DAWless in this context.
Same. Thank you. Hey, Brett, what do you think?
The other thing that I think that it does is that freeform sort of play. It not only introduces you to some of the things that you wouldn't normally find in or at least I don't normally find when I'm doing straight up song construction. I find sometimes, the beats and whatnot I create kind of limit my creativity towards it. In a way, it's like, okay, well, here's the structure, build on the structure, and now it's a house. When I don't have that pressure, and there's no, when I don't have that pressure, there's no such thing as a mistake. And so You can, it's like, okay, we'll push the synthesizer this way and see what we get out of it. Okay, cool. The windows are shaking. Now we got something.
Yeah, man, thank you. That's another really fascinating thing is that there comes a point, unfortunately, when knowledge, your head gets in the way of experimentation. I saw this great interview with David Lee Roth, how he was talking about you got to let your thighs do the thinking. As far as like, he thinks 128 BPM is the perfect dance beat. Sure. He said this very funny thing. It's a meme thing that if you're dancing and holding your beer, if it's too fast, your beer spills. And I thought that's fantastic. Yeah, it's really interesting how you stop, how I overthink things, and turning my mind off has become such a challenge. And I'm at a point now where I'm taking vitamins to try and turn my mind off. That there's good neurological connectivity, and then there's junk. Yeah. So, Razi, what do you think?
I don't know if this is healthy to suggest at this juncture, but every few months I'll find a rat hole of YouTube style videos that do the same for me that you're trying to do with vitamins. And right now it's heavy rock crushing videos from Southeast Asia.
Wow.
Basically, they have these just massive boulders go in, gravel comes out for a half hour, and occasionally they have to whack the thing with a sledgehammer, and they're wearing sandals because it's the desert and there's no safety standards or anything, and there's just open belts driving the machinery and these massive boulders, and the power and the hypnotic sort of nature of this stuff. I don't know. There's
It's
a reason
fascinating.
ASMR and these kinds of videos have tens of thousands of views. It's like it's a place to go.
Really fascinating. I do like setting up like a modular blip bloop that goes for hours. And I don't I've never really had interest in, broadcasting them or anything because I just don't think people give a shit. And plus, blip bloop stuff that as opposed to blippity bloppity hat, blippity bloppity synths is I find it extremely uninteresting. I do not find it engaging. And if I have blip bloop and I'm just sort of like creating tones and colors and shit with the blaster beam, then it becomes a really good thing. So I'm gonna fucking sideline this for a bit. Is that something I find really difficult for me? Is it all right if I just sideline this? Here I go.
Of
Thank
course.
you. Is that I'm aware of the amount of admin that I do. And basically, if I'm not on the music computer, I'm on the other computer, this computer, the laptop, and that's admin. And it used to be about half of it was admin. Now it's 80% is admin. And the crazy thing about working on a computer is it sucks the life out of you. And I find it very difficult to go, oh, I'm going to go and do something else now. Like I'm trying to get back into the thing where like at 6 o'clock ish, I have a hard out and I paint or I, work on music or something, like not looking at a fucking computer. I am aware that my mind is becoming damaged. My thought process is becoming unclear, damaged, and broken. The word I want to use is retarded, which is the medical word, but I'm not allowed to use it because people are fucked. That my neurological process has become retarded because of the slow neurological connection and the way too much information and stimulation and everything else that's going into my brain right now. And I was talking to my brother-in-law and he says, every 45 minutes you take a break. And it's like, wow, really? Every 6 hours I take a break. Which is why I'm trying to listen to more records or CDs, not like Spotify playlist, because you have to get up and change it to get out of your seat, go and change it, then make a decision, go, what am I going to listen to now? Ivan, what do you think about this? And this is all pertaining to, fuck, I just want to make music.
Yes, and I discovered something this week. There are long COVID symptoms that really suck, and they are very long COVID symptoms. Like, I'm still suffering from the like body reception. Like, my right hand occasionally is not where I thought it should be, or it surprises me with its presence. And yeah, no, I mean, some of the long COVID symptoms, like,
That's horrifying. You may have just paused because we got a bad connection.
back and
Sorry,
executed.
go ahead.
Yeah, the muse was taken out back and executed at some point. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't been able to touch, like I haven't made anything new in ages because of it.
Um, it's I am aware that I may be suffering long COVID as well. That in my fog, I've started taking ginkgo biloba again. Dad and Mum had a tree. They have a tree in the front yard, and it's a male ginkgo biloba, which is very rare. And I was crushing the leaves up while I was there and drying them out and turning them into a tea. And let me fucking tell you, it cleared your mind out. And you remembered everything. And there was a whole bunch of stuff back there that I didn't want to remember. And it's like, ah, shit. But it's interesting. I've started taking ginkgo biloba again. I'm walking heaps. I'm eating healthy. I'm being a very healthy guy and everything else. But I'm still drastically overwhelmed by, I don't know. I just want to be a really good painter and a really good musician. But anyway, that spiel's going absolutely nowhere, except Ivan, I really feel your pain. Yeah. Dude, I didn't know that about long
I think
COVID.
now let's just like keep treating it like it's long COVID, and you know, hopefully it gets better.
Mm. Mm.
Because yeah, it's been kind of kicking my ass. The
Mm.
but now that I know that I need to up all of my long COVID treatment thing, because this fight is not over.
My word, it is not. Um, okay. Okay. Thank you. So, as far as neurological health goes, because we seem to be taking a bit of a pivot into that, if you struggle with neurological health, what positive things, and it's so fascinating. It's not just, oh, depression, see a therapist anymore. It's really funny. That conversation's gone away because increasingly people can't afford to see a therapist. Well, that went dark, but we won't go dark. Unless it's ambient music, then we'll go dark. Oh, by the way, I did a interview with Alex on his on Vulture Culture's it's on Vulture Culture's YouTube. It's coming out next week. I'm super excited about it. What if you could offer a tidbit of how to deal with your brain when it is broken? Please, I'd like to hear that.
I'll go.
Please.
All right. So I don't try to fix it. I know that's weird to say, but in my experience, the fastest way is through, not around. So what I try to do is I try to do things, for an example, woodworking, or something like that, something completely different, but nobody else is around me. And it's something I'm doing physically so that my mind can do what it needs to do. And often for me, the way this kind of works is I'm very introverted. Takes me a while to warm up to people like you guys. And but I'm constantly running scenarios in my head, day in, day out, wake, sleep, doesn't matter. So there's advantages to this, and that one, it gives me, these are the paths that, that you can take, kind of like a tree, um, instead of just being stuck on the trunk. The problem is, for me, is a lot of times that's associated with anger, and that tends to drive me down a path. So getting away from people a little bit is that necessary component for me to help deal with that. And it's a matter of working through it. And I mean, there's family issues, there's music issues, there's just life in general issues that everyone's always dealing with. So, but I found for me that if I try to skirt them at all and push them aside, they just come back meaner. And so I guess I kind of try to be meaner than them in a way, and force you right up to the front. And I'll say that this happens too in conversations, so, there's never been a shortage of grief online. I'm ex-gen as well, grew up with these things coming online. They are my home. And I embrace them in that regard. It's alien without it somewhat. It's also very tiring at times, but ultimately, there's pieces of me that are sitting there trying to take it to a creative angle. There are pieces of me trying to sit there and say, okay, maybe I can help this scenario, by saying this. And then there's plenty of times in which it's like, you know what, you're an idiot. You know what, I don't care what you think anymore. But if I don't do that process, I end up just hurting myself. It ends up being circular in my own mind. And, there's a balance between having these engagements where you're just trying to set the world on fire, and also sitting there holding the match ready to set the world on fire, but saying, hey, look, we can have a conversation and maybe I won't.
Firstly, thank you for going fishing the other week. I did enjoy that a lot. Secondly, and I see your hand, Rosie. I'll throw this to you very shortly. I do like what you said about the match, because the fucker about having a match and ready to drop it is option one is you drop it, and option B is you have to put it out with your fingers.
Uh-huh.
And that's going to hurt. Thank you, Brent.
Uh-huh.
Razi, talk to me, baby.
This is like the exact worst case scenario when you can't get anything done and you didn't like have an escape hatch, like there's no way to invent something that's going to fix your situation when you can't create ways to fix the situation. It's the same problem. So you're talking about like something I'm really familiar with being like very, very difficult and entrenched. And specific to that, the only thing that I found related to this as a positive influence, fix, repair plan is to put things into action when you can, that are commitments, that are external influences, that are setting things in motion that are going to come back to you, and you can still quit them, and you can still get anxiety when the thing that you scheduled for 3 months out and it turns out that you're not doing so well in 3 months. But it comes back to you. You don't have to be the one because it's on the calendar, or you told somebody else, or you made a plan with somebody. It comes back to you with its own momentum, and you don't have to be the one to solve, how do I fix this thing? The world will come in because you set it into motion at a time when you could, and you're now reaping what you sowed at that time, which are little bits of positivity and influence and momentum for the things that you planned, thought ahead, gave to yourself as a little gift for next month, next half a year. And it's hard to think of those things specific to when I'm stuck, because you're just making plans in life. But there's some effort to be super worthwhile to put into putting those little contingencies on the calendar in your future for your worst moments.
Thank you. Ivan, how do you deal with this?
Try to be as in the moment as humanly possible. Find ways to get in the moment as much as possible.
I thank you. As a musician, all of this stuff, yeah, Ivan, you've crashed, so when you jump back in,
There we go. I'm
okay, you
back.
good? Please continue.
Yeah, yeah. Like find ways to find your center, or to head in the right direction. I you know, nothing is Zen time for me as going to the range, making very small holes in paper from a long distance.
Mm.
It is not as easy as people think as it is, but you have like amount of focus and just like clarity that like you end up achieving while you're just kind of like resting into it. I'm gonna take my bad network connection and step aside.
Mm. Thank you. It's interesting. So my brain, when it's healthy, will be able to take concepts and everything and turn them into music or turn them into whatever, to process shit. That's what we do. The lesson I've learned is that, you're trying to shut down, there's all these different groups of people, and there's people out there, which is most people. Then there's the people that step in who might be family. Then there's your close friends. Notice how I say families out there, close friends here, and your partners are here. And the closer it gets to you, the more you are obligated to give a shit. And the more, whether you like it or not, their influence, it plays a big part on you. But it's blocking that or dealing with that or, I don't know. That's the great thing about Frank, is that Frank just doesn't give a shit. He just wants to play right now or sleep right now or eat right now. Yeah, which he will want to do any minute now. I don't know. My music right now, I'm trying to push album number 12 for Angelspit through. It's really good. I'm really happy with it. The lyrics are really vicious. I don't know if I told you guys this. I had a dream that one of the kids who lived on my block in this dream was Eminem. And we hang out and we used to play and in my dream, we would write music together. This is a dream I had in Australia. And I had this dream that we wrote this song together. It was like fucking awesome. These two 12-year-olds, it was a very 12-year-old kind of song. And I woke up and the song was in my head and I wrote it down. And I recorded it finally this week. And I'm really, really happy with it. Like, I don't know. We could swing this right now because I'm running this into the ground, is advice for people who are just starting out. What advice would you give to somebody who is just starting out? They might be 20, they might be 40. Brett, what would you tell them?
Learn one instrument, any instrument, whatever you like. Learn one of them really, really well. What it's going to do is it's going to teach you enough about musical concepts, enough about structure and whatnot to give your creativity something to work from. That would be my first and foremost. I started on snare drum, by the way.
That's good. Thank you. Razi.
I'd say you're telling me you're starting out, but what have you been doing for the past 8 years that you're actually really not starting out with? Because you had violin lessons in kindergarten and you've been singing in chorale at church and you've been listening to rock music or going to clubs or whatever. There's always something that makes it so you're not really just starting out, but let's call this an inflection point. What are you bringing with you? What are we building on?
your artistic baggage. That's such a good point. Because I always say to somebody when they don't want to sing or they're first starting out singing, and it's like you've been using your voice all day, every day, your whole life. And you know, when you talk to your kitten, you've got that voice, or you talk to a lover, or you talk to your sister or brother when you're really angry with them, or you're just projecting to someone, or you've already got this complete quiver thing with many different arrows in it. Quiver? What do you call it here?
I don't think it's queef.
Quiver. That you can rub your oil on and it can become erect. Of all the different things you want to do. And, you know, through training and whatever else. If I was, so that's one piece of advice. If I would have if I gave another piece of advice, it would be you're writing for yourself, not for your friends, and definitely not for an algorithm. I was thinking the other day how the expectation of the whatever has changed so much. I've seen so many changes of it in my life. Like it had to be when oh, you've got to play for this a radio station in Australia called Triple J. Oh, you got to make music for that. Then it became, oh, you've got to make music for live for the pubs. Or then it's become, oh, you've got to make music for a record label because you want to get signed. Then it became, oh, you don't want to get signed. You can do anything you want. You're an indie label, so you got to write music for that. Never just write music for yourself. Then it became, oh, well, because of the internet and we're using these really crappy lo-fi 4-bit WAV files, you got to make it sure that fidelity is for AM radio. Then it became, I'm going to go on. Then it became low rate MP3, so why even bother? Then it became fucking, it's going to be in Splash or Flash or Future Splash or Flash or, you know, that internet stuff. So it has to be stems or it has to be something that can be broken into. Then it became, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. Then it became, well, it can only be 30 seconds. Then now it's fucking whatever. Like, constantly, this bubble of bullshit that is right above my head has been telling me the whole time, oh, you got to do this, you got to do this, you've got to be more versatile, oh, safe sucks, oh, fuck off. Good music is what is important. You can define that however you want, because you get the truth. The most important thing that you have in your musical arsenal is your opinion. That's what you have. It is the core most important thing. And it's funny that in music, I think the evil powers that be know about that, and they're trying to interject and change that. They're trying to water down your opinion. And whether that opinion is where you put that snare drum, what the snare drum sounds like, what the bass line is, if it's going to be a real bass or a Moog or a plug-in or a fucking whatever, if it's going to be all of these different things, if the lyrics are going to have naughty words in it, or I better take those naughty words out, or I better not say that because I might offend people, please remember that in 5 years' time, when your music is still around and all of this other bullshit that is telling you what to do, it will be gone. And your song will be left there. And the impact that it has had in your song will be holes in it that will make it structurally weak. Don't believe the hype. Be a selfish bastard and make your music the way you want. Your opinion is everything. Brett, what do you think?
So I just kind of wanted to reinforce that point, and I think Angelspit versus Ice Planet 9000 is a good example. Just overall, you know, it's a lot, you know. So industrial's been around, you know, a minute now, so everyone's got kind of an idea of what the genre is supposed to sound like. But ambient, on the other hand, is one of those areas where there's a concept sort of what it should sound like, but there's a lot more flexibility. And so when you step outside of those rules, no one's really offended. And I think that's one of those things that, you know, I think that's one of those things that you can continue to push. You know, if you go step outside of the genres, there's no rule set yet, and so you have more flexibility. It was kind of my thought.
That's the truth. Does anybody else want to jump in at this point? Oh, come on. Resi, I'm off.
You're
You
going
go,
to
Resi.
complain if I start talking about Future Splash Animator, though.
Well, I was
'cause
about to say, and then, because halfway through writing you a letter, yeah, we're making
Macromedia.
and then because they bought it, they bought Future Splash because they saw it as a threat to Director.
Mm-hmm.
Because Flash was doing all this stuff that Director couldn't do. So they bought Splash, turned it into Flash, and absorbed it into fucking Director.
I stuck with Director as long as I could until everybody wanted a Flash intro on their restaurant website in 1996. Right?
Yeah. Okay, so thank you. And that is a great example of, oh, this is the huge thing. This is so important. Oh, it's so important. Oh, this is going to change everything. Nope, it's gone. And, you know, I've mentioned it a few times about how at least 3 internet bubbles burst. Like one of them was, get a website. We'll build you one page for $10,000. That's what it used to cost. And it was an image and a couple of words. Then it was, we're going to put animated GIFs on it. Then it's going to be Flash. Then, oh no, we can't do shopping carts because that's too much. Now, man, I'm telling you, and that was just one example of, you know, of the bubbles bursting. Then it was no longer like these huge internet companies and all of these shares and everything that was set up on this market that was way overpaying, like 100 times. But it was cool graphics and they were fucking good. You look back on those websites, man, they were really good design. They were great designs. There's a company in Sydney called Spike, and Spike Media made all the really fucking cool websites. And, you know, there's a couple of these really standout, like late 90s places that were doing the coolest shit. Bubble burst. Then there was another bubble and it burst. And all this money went into something and and it burst. And now, instead of a corporation doing it, content, the end user is doing it for free. And my issue with this and how this, we could talk about Java. The issue with why that is a big deal is because it is pushing music to become something else. Yeah, for sure. AIs are now that one, and you know that's you know the one. I was thinking, look, here's another rant. I always call it believe. Yeah, believe. Is this a believe thing? And when I say believe, I mean sure. That auto-tuners came out and they were used a little bit, but then sure, by accident in the studio, the producers did something and apparently it was an accident, and Believe came out where that very iconic thing happened, which is really actually hard to replicate these days because auto-tuners have got so much better. Then everyone's using an auto-tuner, and auto-tuners are going to be the death of the music industry, and vocalists are going to lose their life, and it's all over because of auto-tuning, and everything's over and it's all fucked. And then as it becomes more integrated, it becomes more a part of what's going on. So auto-tuning is just a tool that we go to. Then it's this. Then it's that. Like electric guitars. They've come in. It's all over. The sewing machine's been invented. It's all over. Blah, blah, blah. Now it's just a tool. Now it's just another thing that you can have in your queef. So Ivan's looking lost right now. So all we're thinking about are things that are filling that queef. Anybody watching this out of context is not going to get the joke. So I just say fuck it, man. Drove the ship. We just lost someone. We just lost Ivan. You just got to keep
the queef.
Yeah, it was the queef. You've got to keep steering the ship. And do not worry about all of this stupid stuff. Do not be distracted, Derek Zoolander, by the beautiful things, by the beautiful celebrities. You've just got to stay on that catwalk and do your thing. Sorry, that was just such a reference right there. Does anybody else want to jump in at this point and talk about focusing?
I think I've gone back to single track mine now.
It all comes back to porn, man. You guys are talking about computer stuff, and I was going, yeah, but can I see porn? Yeah, steering the ship is a sex position.
I don't know what it involves, but I guess
You didn't have to do a visual.
I really did.
No, actually, he did.
I wouldn't have jumped in with that if it wasn't absolutely necessary.
Yeah, this is out of rock, not out of cock. I needed that. Yeah, the other piece of advice to people I'd say starting out is don't lose your sense of humor. Your sense of humor is going to get you through everything, and wow, I just laughed, and I can feel that there's this whole area of my brain that opened. There's an area of my brain that's opened. It was my brain is here, and nothing above that point is working. When we were laughing and being stupid, talking about sex positions, dicks, and porn and queefs, my brain opens up. Isn't that fascinating? I can actually feel it. I can feel the blood moving in an upper part of my brain right now.
We know your next song title.
Have you read my song titles? It's all about this shit and cannibalism.
Cannibal Queef.
Yeah, Cannibal Queef. Great band. So yeah, don't lose your sense of humor. And people are going to try and tell you, oh, you're not allowed to talk about that thing, and you're not allowed to say that word, and oh, fucking never stops. I know you do. You do, because you can't be edited. This is the last place where you can be edited. And, most of those people aren't going to, if they don't give a shit, they're not going to listen to your music, or they're not going to read your lyrics. It's for you. It's really funny, man. Kittenhole had to come up. Thank you, Diana. It's funny that there's so much, I put so much work into my lyrics. I put so much work, and somebody posted Stand in Line, which got released just before the Black Lives Matter thing came out. So it was written up to that point. Like at that point, it wasn't in the, it was, but it wasn't to that extent. And that was at COVID and everything else like that. And I stole, and I was listening to it going, yeah, this is still very, very relevant. And I actually stole a lyric because I can't sample people, so I just steal their words. And I stole the Joker from Batman Dark Knight, where he said, when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And I just thought, holy shit. And when I'm trying to write a lyric, when I'm trying to write a song, I'm trying to, there's a word that I'm going to pay homage to, or I'll take a quote from Gandhi, or I'll take a quote from Martin Luther King, or something, the riot of the language of the riots of the language of the unheard, which is Martin Luther King, that will be in a critical part of the song, and the rest of the lyrics have to provide a framework to respectfully, with power, support that. And I think I'm the only person who ever listens to it. Really goes in and all, thank you. And yeah, so, and if you read the lyrics, they're full of humor. I'll say something really very serious, and then I'll say something stupid. Not to take the piss out of that, but maybe to take the piss out of myself or take the piss out of the situation. Gee, I don't know. But yeah, music is ultimately for yourself. Sure, other people are going to hear it, blah, 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 but it's for you. Does anybody else want to jump in right now?
I'll just say that that's right. It's if you're not doing it for you to start with, then then you're not communicating anything anyone is going to want to hear.
Yeah. This is your output. This is your outlet. So utilize it. Don't let somebody tell you. It's really, really like incredibly postmodern that we're now in a situation where your outlet, your method of getting the angst out is now being censored, and it's being censored inside your brain. All because I'm not allowed to say that. Like, that's what endlessly blows my mind. Like, I this is why I can't write music with people anymore, is they always go, oh no, we better not say that because we'll get cancelled. And it's like, say what? What are you talking about? You're a fucking musician. It's your job to get cancelled. It is your job to say, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. That's in the job description. Did you get into music because it was fucking, oh my God, because it was being nice to you and because it was telling you what you wanted to hear? No, you got into music because it was addressing some deep, dark area of yourself that you didn't understand, and you felt the world didn't understand, and finally you felt something that reaches out through the noise and the bullshit, and oh, I relate to that thing. I'm not alone. And now, I will speak for myself. I'm not speaking about the world or anything else, and this comes into the clutter inside my fucking brain. I am like my bench that I listen to, like with my music and lyrics, it used to be, can I do this live? Now it is, does this offend me? And if it doesn't offend me, I'm not doing it. Because I am aware that I have become so easily offended. And oh my God, that pisses me off. The more time I spend around people, the more I listen to other people, the more I become so easily offended about everything. It's like, fuck. Yeah, am I going to get in trouble for this? Because if I'm not going to get in trouble, I'm not doing it. Because, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Anybody else?
That's exactly right. I mean, that was actually goes back to, you know, what we were talking about earlier, and you know, and how you deal with your mental states and such like that. And I was kind of telling you, it's like there's times in which you just have to set the world on fire. There's other times in which, you know, you realize it's time to put the match out. But, you know, not being afraid to communicate your thoughts is just going to have to be one of those things. And I will say that, at least in overt appearance, X-Gen seems to kind of be that asshole. And, you know, I, you know, just a normal conversation with friends and such all the time, it's like, nah, you can't say that anymore. And I'm like, well, it's like this. If I'm going to say it, either you have the capacity to sit with me and understand that I'm not just going at this to be, you know, a dick, that I actually have a thought, I've completed that thought, and I'm going to get it out there, just like you. Or I need to think about it a little bit more, but you don't get to stop it. You don't get to stop that machinery. That's not your machinery to guide. That's up to me.
Yeah. And I think that it is a personal call to arms within yourself to call all of the chaos and what's going on inside yourself to be focused and to go, the one thing I can do is scream. That's what I got left, is I can scream. And you have a vehicle to scream, and that's your music, or it's your art, or it's whatever it is. And it might be a soft ambient scream, or it might be a love song scream, or a country music scream, or something. It might be a whisper, or it just might be blood coming out of your throat because you're so fucking enraged. Because that's the thing, is that where does all the rage go? What becomes of the brokenhearted? Music is supposed to be, for me, is the language of rage. and I'm not talking on behalf of other people anymore. I can't. I just don't care. I just don't. I am enraged, and I am going to fucking unleash. And I will continue to unleash, and I encourage all of you to keep fucking unleashing. Shit, by the way, hey, look, I have to sideline really quickly. Today is the last day to back Aaron's Kickstarter. In fact, fuck, I think it's ended. It may have ended. Did it end? So if you haven't yet, there's 2 hours left. If you haven't left, please go back that. We got to keep Hack going. And even if it's $8, it's like, baby, I believe in what you're doing. Yeah, so, and again, I thank you guys. Jesus Christ, I thank you guys. So, okay, that's it. I just ran out of things to say. I sidelined myself. Somebody, somewhere, now, go. Thanks, Rob. What?
I didn't have anything. I was just making strange noises just because I couldn't think of anything on the fly.
Good. Start saying queef randomly. It seemed to work before. Another comment I have down here. Do we want to tackle this? Okay. All right. Does it make sense for independent artists to seek publication outside the USA? Brent, can I throw this to you and for you to ask me that question, ask us that question as non-politically as you possibly can?
Understood. So as you know, as non-politically as I can be, you know, a couple things that we can learn about, you know, the United States and where we're going is simply that there's going to be some deregulation of industry. It's not, you know, one way or the other. In that, there is the question and concern of how this applies to the music industry, and also further defined to how does this apply to AI. So in the United States, we've got Silicon Valley, AI is coming online, and actually the US is one of the biggest AI producers in the world. All these things are well-known facts. And there's been, since AI's come online, you know, there's been various ways to train models, and we've discussed, you know, how, you know, artworks and whatnot are being used to train them, you know, paintings and things like that, and what the value or what the, whether or not that's actually crossing the lines of free or fair use. And if it is crossing the lines of fair use, then how does the artist recoup some of that? And so the concern there is if you relax those fair use rules and whatnot, and allow the AIs to be able to literally, you know, create an original work based on your sound. And the example that I was given here is an AI is trained on Metallica's entire catalog, and then produces an original work. Then what is owed to Metallica? And so with that, I started wondering if the United States is doing this, does it then make sense to try to move your or try to release your music in countries or other areas, sites, something that more respects your rights?
Thank you. Firstly, I want to point out that the hilarious irony or the shitty irony of going, oh, let's do Metallica.
Yeah.
Because do you remember what happened with the whole file sharing thing?
Oh yeah, and
like,
it's a great example because of it.
Did they go, oh well, let's pick the the biggest baddest bee in the nest and let's pick on that? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna throw it over to. I don't really have any knowledge. I don't know anything. So here's the resonator. Here's Resi.
Sparks into three things for me, and the first is ethics, the second is copyright law, and the third is your personal motivations. On the copyright law front, so far, since we talked about this an hour ago, a little bit before the show. Carl, you actually mentioned that we are beholden to the laws of the countries that we release the music in, and we are citizens of the country that we created the music in. And the laws are the laws, and you have your obligations to activism and joining unions and making associations for people who think the same way about your thoughts and turning those actions into laws. That's one way of dealing with the inevitability of computers creating stuff that sounds like your stuff. The I guess ethical considerations are, I don't really have much to add on that front, where I think we all get the same queasy feeling when we think about it as starkly as my work was used to train a thing that makes work that sounds like me. Feels weird, like it replaces me. But the personal motivation thing comes into play for me when I think this through, as I'm sure we all have now a lot of times. I still make the music. I still want to make a song. I still want to record a thing. I still want to play guitar, and that doesn't change. It's a little bit more defeatist vibe going on in the world when I think, oh, a computer can do this, but I still want to make a song. I still want to learn what makes a good song so I can do it, that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I wanted to talk about this in 3 months after I've had a time to do huge amounts of talking and reading and watching video essays on it. But that's my first blush response to, vibes on that front.
And thank you for first response. I think this will be coming up all the time. And isn't it interesting how much this has changed since the last time we brought this up?
Yeah.
It's become more insidious.
Mhm.
Who would have guessed? Here's some thoughts from Carl. One, where does the music industry stand on this? And will it do anything really? Because it doesn't. And it will probably only do things for music industry users. Fuck the union. Anyway, did I just say that? Well, yes, I think I did. If you write a song in Australia, the law states if you write a song, it's yours. No one can buy it or remove ownership. No one can buy the ownership of it. Copyright is a different thing. But the ownership of the song, you are protected by APRA. The minute you write a song, it's yours. And I believe that that also extends to if you're incarcerated, because you get a lot of rights removed if you're incarcerated. But I believe songwriting is something that stays with you if you are incarcerated. I believe the American laws are very similar to that. Again, I will say, look, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Like increasingly, for example, with Kickstarter, if you do a Kickstarter now, there's a big thing saying how much AI is in this. Are the images AI? Is the music AI? They want to know. I am not interested, but I know a lot of people are, but I don't mean to be dismissive. Let me rephrase that. My real interest is, how do I continue to use music for my organic brain to verbalize what's going on? There are lots of dark ambient things that have been AI created that are getting tens of thousands of views in a month. Lots. Which says a lot about dark ambient.
Mhm.
And, that's another thing as well, is that, look, I don't know. That's the whole thing. And that I am powerless to do anything about it. I really am. I can keep writing music and keep being an outspoken bastard. But when you have an AI, Carl, I think that will be called Judgment Day. Because I will push that fucking button. Razi, go.
Dark ambient is actually one of the places that I've seen it talked about most, in that it does have some things that AI can do pretty well, because we're not talking about vocals, and that's one of the tells, and we're not necessarily talking about rock drum kits, which is one of the tells. But interestingly, and this is going back to the Venus Theory video that he did about his own situation, and I get the feeling that this is corporate interests a lot, not just copyright law, but in that Content ID, YouTube's system, is very influential on how this works, because if you create a signature sound for your career, the AI corpus is the AI is trained on that corpus, including your stuff. It creates some stuff that's royalty free, sounds like you. It's not really royalty free. That is copyright encumbered. Somebody uses it. It's now in the Content ID system, and it matches something that you did. You've got this conflict where YouTube is now the arbiter of that conflict, and they are flagging it, and you could lose your channel if that's your livelihood. You could get, it's a strange little bit of like wrong.
Yeah. What's also interesting is that if you put prompts into an AI, do you own it, or does the corporation?
Well, right now the company does. There are absolute restrictions on that and disclaimers at the bottom of the text for the.
Yeah, and I know. Well, I think Midjourney, although I don't remember, they owned the images. Although you had to go into a higher bracket for you to start leasing the images more or something. But that's ironic. So I don't know. No idea. But I do know that it's going to have an impact on, we're making a horror movie now, and I just type in scary, dark thing, cheerleader walking down a hallway backwards, brackets, she is a virgin, and token boy who is going to die. Here comes murderer, generate. 3 minutes, 14 seconds, generate. With climax at 2 minutes. And I also know it's having an impact on advertising as well. Because it costs a lot of money to get music made in an advertising place. So there, Brett, talk to me.
So maybe another way of kind of looking at this, or looking at a piece of this, is, what does it look like now to release music in other countries? I mean, what does it look like? Yeah, I mean, I know this is not U.S. centric at this point, but what did it look like for like Rammstein to release a U.S. album?
Exactly the same. Because they're bound by this horrible mafia called GEMA, which is the German fucking musical bullshit engineering bunch of bastards, who are basically like APRA or AMCOS or BMI or the British Composers Guild. They get a guild. They get a fucking guild. I want to be in a guild. I know I was shooting my mouth off about this. Copyright laws across the world are basically the same. And everybody's got the same thing. And whether, I think it's actually up to the broadcasters whether they will play something. It's their choice. Like, it would not surprise me one bit if the Australian Broadcasting Commission went, we are not playing anything with AI in it. There are increasingly corporations that are saying we are not going to have any AI generated images, none at all. So let's see what happens. But Razi, I see your hand bringing truth.
Yeah, I hope I can, but it's a lot to keep straight, because we're talking about two separate rights, and the performance rights for the song ownership and the publishing side of things versus the mechanical side, which usually labels own. In the case of Rammstein, they have separate agreements in separate countries for the mechanical stuff. So the sales of the music happens with agreements in copyright law for the country that it's being released in. And those are usually licensing agreements with their original label or with the artists themselves. Whereas the song ownerships, those agreements are automatically reciprocal with the performance of the song on radio. And so if a US radio station is associated to paying fees with ASCAP and BMI, that money does funnel back to GEMA or whatever country the original artist songwriter owns the song in. And it's a mess when you try to follow these revenue streams, but it is functional, dysfunctionally functional. It's just a lot to keep track of, and we're mincing or crossing streams about which things are copyright law, which things are song ownership, and which things are performance royalties and rights that aren't law but are agreements. So just that, it's a lot to keep track of. But at the bottom of it, I hope what we're talking about is not getting beaten down by the potential for things getting fucked up about our music and wanting to keep the need to create intact without worrying so much about how it's going to get messed up. And I think we are at a bit of an inflection point with the potential changes of copyright law and changing of how our union representations and our organizational representers influence the outlets and the people that pay the licensing fees for the performances of our music. But I don't have an idea of where it's going to go. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. And that's, I agree that what we don't know is what's going to happen, or we really don't know what the hell's going on now either. But what we do have control of is you've got to make your fucking music, and that's it. Because you don't, you know what's going to happen.
And I think also at the point which it really matters, it's going to be worth it to have legal representation for somebody who's been studying this the entire time it's been going on, and just pay them the $3,000 or whatever it's worth, you know, to get some answers and have it drawn up to your liking and to the satisfaction of the person on the other side of the contract. But right now, fucking, what difference does it make where the $20 comes from, or if it's 15 or 35? And to some extent.
Yeah,
Small
that
numbers.
Yeah. Brett, you were saying.
I was agreeing. I was saying, yeah, that does make sense. I guess if you get, you know, it's also a matter of, you know, how far, you know, up the food chain you are before it starts to actually, you know, meet for a lot of people. You know, an example there is like the hobbyist, you know, isn't going to really be affected too much, whereas, you know, Beyonce is going to be ripped off 10,000 ways a second.
Thank you. Yes, Razi.
You know, where literally none of this matters, like publishing royalties, copyright law, is selling stuff directly to your fans, either through patronage or direct sales of digital or physical goods. Like, none of this enters into it. There's no royalties involved. You are just selling them a thing. And that's like so much more interesting and pure and invigorating. And to sort of like skirt around the answer is like, fuck. If you're in a position where performance or streaming royalties and copyright law truly matter, awesome. I want to hear from you and know what your take is and answers on it. But I, at least in personal experience, have so much exponentially more of a financial relationship with people who are paying for music through direct sales that are not encumbered or involved in any of this licensing, royalties, law. It's just a relationship you have with a second party. Here's my music. Here's a way you can buy it. Somebody's going to get a cut, but let's pretend it's really that simple. So there's hope in that for me anyway.
Agreed. And I think that that is going to be something that's there for a long time. And I feel quietly confident that, you know, our demographics, audience, community, you know, they're going to keep supporting us, and because we keep supporting them. And Josie's so very cute right now. And Frank loves the cable tie line, theatrical tie line. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Hair thingy. Ivan, you've been so quiet today.
I'm in Chicago. I'm at the hotel for the Front 242 show tonight.
Cool. Excellent.
So my connection sucks, and that made me maybe a little quieter.
All right.
That doesn't sound like any fun.
Yeah, maybe great.
Then we shall keep talking. Then we shall keep talking. Somebody asked a really interesting question. The impact of synthetic music on humanity. just a simple one for the last 20 minutes. What's the impact of synthetic music on humanity?
Isn't all music synthetic?
Sure.
Then I would say positive
Great.
overall. You know, I mean, the guitar is not naturally. I mean, we don't have a guitar tree.
You know, we don't
Going out
have a
back.
guitar tree.
It's near the ginkgo biloba.
Yeah, it's near the Moog tree, the Moog bush, which is currently burning.
I mean, going back to even native instruments, you know, the didgeridoo. I mean, you know, it is all of it synthetic. I mean, it's all humans being finding new and interesting ways to communicate.
Okay, I love that. May I?
Yeah.
I think music is the firstborn of technology, or music is what demanded technology to exist. Interesting point. Our beloved Lucifer, who was the angel of music, had tambourines and flutes carved into its, because it wasn't a he or a she, carved into its skeleton, into its bones. So Lucifer was a walking instrument. Us mere mortals, however, require technology, and you are absolutely right. Technically speaking, a didgeridoo, anything else has been a created, built machine. And I'll even argue that whacking two rocks together or clapsticks or whatever is a piece of technology. I want to say that music has had a profound. When you mix music with hallucinogenics, you get fast-paced evolution of humankind, of humanity kind, of humanity unkind, of humanity bunch of bastards. When you look at I think synthesizers have opened up something in the human mind, and I think really around about the 60s, 50s, 60s, something started opening up. Yes, there was LSD. And it's really interesting how each great drug revolution came with it a musical revolution as well, or with each musical revolution came a drug revolution. Like there was the acid sound, there was the bebop heroin sound, or there was the Big Bang cocaine thing, there was rock and roll weed, there was all of these different, and a bit of cocaine, there was all of this stuff going on that fueled the music, or the music something human mind. Wow, what a crazy thing. I believe that music has open mind. I believe that the synthetic frequencies that are created from synthesizers specifically have added something, have opened pathways in the brain neurologically. I can't prove that, but I sound like that guy, George, what's his name, who goes, aliens, synthesizers. Maybe I need to become him, like the synth version of him. Brett, what do you got?
First of all, you'd have to be abducted a follicle at a time.
Done. Tick box. That was including the queef too. That was the one that hurt.
Secondly, where it comes to synthesizers, I think synthesizers kind of they're kind of a summarization engine. You know, is they can do what orchestras used to do. Yeah, they can do new and novel things as well, but what people are still gravitating to, or chord structures and whatnot that are resonant, across all these timelines, if you will. They speak to something about humans themselves. We don't typically. I guess maybe a better example is we're not collectively trying to write music for bees and trying to use what they can hear, which would be something completely outside and alien to anything that's existed. I mean, maybe Kevin Key for cats, but but there's I don't know. I think at the end of the day, whether you're talking about 3 dudes or 3 women collectively creating mash, and there's a rhythm there between how they're doing that, or the miners on, you know, railroads and things like that, or you know, all those things are rhythms and whatnot that are very human centric, and then extrapolated creatively into something that could be shared and more palatable for the masses.
Love it. I follow a thing called Diesel and Dust, and it's world music, and they're just little clips of all this fantastic world music. And like you said, people who have songs they do when they work to keep everybody synchronized in the thing. And instead of it being a machine, it's people who are synchronized by a song, and everybody's singing the song, and they know that when this thing happens, they have to hit the hammer and push the load across. It's fascinating. The wonderful thing about synthesizers is that it's a return to pre-equal temperament. And equal temperament was Bach's curse, where Bach said the distance between every single note is going to be the same fraction, a 12th. So that doesn't fall naturally into the harmonic response. So you're going to, when you play a chord, for example, you're going to have things that are grading against each other because everything's moved out ever so slightly so it fits within Bach's requirements. The really interesting thing about when you start experimenting with music or sound that is not, or you let yourself sing, you might not be singing equal temperament. You might, and people might who sing out of tune, they might not actually be out of tune. They might be singing equal temperament. They might be singing a scale that's not equal temperament. They might be singing their own scale. That's a really mind-blowing thought. That is a mind-blowing thought. Think about that. You know, you're not naturally going to sing equal temperament. You're naturally going to sing some other scale, and that scale's inside you. The amount of people who are flat, who sing when they sing a third or a sixth, it's kind of between the two. It's not sharp or flat. It's kind of in there. Blues. Yeah, I think that's a very exciting thing about synthesizers, because they go, well, there's no notes. There might be a drone or there might not be a drone, and we're just going to experiment with the sounds and the emotions that each one creates with it. Razi, what do you think about this? Boom, boom.
I think it's fair to say that most groups of people singing fall into just intonation rather than equal temperament, because there's no reason to be off pitch when you're just singing together. And it is a good, clean, pure harmonic experience when that happens. And a group of violins will do it too. They just fall into pitch with each other because this tiny thing. But don't sleep on being able to change key. I mean, that's a pretty valuable thing that we have there, be able to shift the entire third chorus up a half tone for no fucking reason whatsoever.
Go ahead.
No, if you want to jump in there, feel free. But
one of the most beautiful things I have like is when people are just ahing or ga-oming, and then there's some fuckhead who has to sing a fifth, and then there's some dickhead who has to sing the flat seven, and it's like that person needs to be taken out and shot.
Music camp.
Yeah.
Music though, like it's a weird duality of progressive and conservative, you know, like we're always trying to do something slightly unique within this super rigid framework that we've discovered that works for evoking emotion and being sort of a enhancement of language and communication. It's just it's like the technology side of it is progressive, like we're always inventing interesting or pushing the state of the art of our technological abilities as a species, you know, to incorporate that into how we music, yet we're doing it in these like strictures of those 12 notes or 8, 5 depending on, you know, which scale we're using. And there's still so much to be done and developed with the new technology on the 8 notes, and like it's an interesting duality to be always confronting.
I love it. Thank you very much. I feel like we've come to the end of our journey, unless anybody else wants to throw in at this point. Probably not.
Throw a cool question into Twitch. It's like, do cyborgs have the programming for singing on key?
Unfortunately, probably yes.
Yeah.
And it's probably equal to, well, if it exists, it exists. They can do it.
Yeah, it's a useful skill. Why not?
Yeah.
It's a good cyborg.
Mm.
But they also know a lot of other scales and can do some cool melodic inventions that we've never heard. They're not culturally bound. They're completely novel.
Mm.
Thank you, Cyborg.
Thank you, Cyborg. With that, I will say this is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. Thank you for being a part of it for $3 a month. $3 a month. You can join the mayhem and bloody fucking keep this shit show going. December 11th, Ice Planet 9000 is doing a gig, and I'm very excited. It's going to be fucking amazing. It's there. Go get it. I don't know if it's going to be streamed or not, so there you go. This new music is being kickstarted. I think there's an hour left in that. Click on that link. Go support Grim. It's fucking awesome. Wednesday night, Vulture Culture does synthesizers. Synthesizers good. Vulture Culture good. Go Wednesday night. Learn. Brain. Fantastic. Ka-ching, ka-ching. There's a fantastic YouTube playlist called the Industrial Incisions playlist. God damn it. Follow it. Love it. Be a part of it. But I want to thank Rezi. Rezi, you're the best. Thank you, Rezi.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For being the greatest co-host in the galaxy. Boom. But right now, we're going to raid on over to MTV TV. Diana, you're welcome to. Thank you, Diana. And that's where everybody's going to go so we can have eternal life on MTV TV. MTV TV. That's where we're going now. And that raid happened. And yeah, if you're on YouTube, go there as well. I can't say anything on YouTube because this fucking thing doesn't fucking work and I hate my life. But everything's fine. See you next Saturday. Bye. I know. Not that one. Do you remember that time I accidentally